Today I'm going to show you 4 ways to mount your drum module if you don't have a drum rack. That's coming up. What's up guys, Justin Greenwald here, welcome to 65 Drums. This is the place to keep on top of all things Edrum related, so consider subscribing if you haven't yet. Usually with a drum module, you just go clamp it onto one of the steel tubes and you're good to go. But if you don't have a drum rack for whatever reason, all of a sudden you gotta figure out where the heck you're gonna mount one of these things. I've been thinking about this problem recently and I've got 4 different things you can do to mount your drum module without using a drum rack. So let's start off with the cheap, free way. Way number 1 is to either use like a djembe or a bar stool. Basically what you're looking for is something that's somewhere around waist height, that isn't really that big, that's pretty lightweight, that you can take with you if you're gonna go on the road with this drum set. So for me, a bar stool does work. It's about the right height. If I'm sitting in a drum throne, I can look down, I can quickly edit. Unfortunately, if you have a drum module like a KT4, any drum module that has a cable snake where it plugs in on the bottom of the drum module, this won't work for you. You can't just use a flat surface. You're actually gonna have to mount it using a stand or something. That's later on the list. I've got you covered. But if you've got something that has individual ports on it, this is a great way to just have a drum module mount, not spending any extra money at all. Okay, let's move on to way number 2. Way number 2 is the ultra cheap options. You can actually use a music stand. Probably already have one of these lying around anyway, so it's probably free for you. Or you can buy something like a laptop mount on top of a mic stand. That could definitely work depending on the ports of your drum module and everything. Or you can get something like a mic tray that you attach to a cymbal stand. That might work. I don't really recommend any of these options though, because none of the options I've mentioned are really meant to support that much weight. And your drum module is like 40% of the cost of your entire drum set, so you want to make sure you protect that thing. All right, let's move on to option number 3. That's to buy a pad stand. This is probably the most expensive option on this list because it ranges anywhere from like $100 to $150. There are a lot of companies that make this. You got Gibraltar, you got Simmons, you got Roland. Obviously, Roland is the most expensive on the list. Now, the way this works is that most drum modules, or at least a good chunk of them out there, have a standard mount on the back of it. So it's like this rectangle here with 4 screws. What you do is you take off the screws and you remove this plastic plate right here and you screw the drum module straight onto the stand itself. That keeps it really secure, and it's basically a cymbal stand with no cymbal boom arm. So it's a great option. It's like $100, $150. You can probably find them used on eBay as well. This is probably the best case scenario if you want to put out the money and really do it right. And yeah, it definitely earned a place on the list. The reason why it's called a pad support stand is because it's meant to hold things like the Roland Octopad or maybe the Alesis option. I don't know if it has that same mounting plate on it or not, but it's meant to hold things like that. It's kind of universal. It can mount a lot of things to it, and it's a really good option if you want to use it with a drum module. And again, this works really well for those of you that have the cable snake on the back, because you can't lay this on a flat surface. You need it raised up a little bit so the cable can get in there and plug in to your drum module so you can actually hear sound out of this thing. Just an FYI though, look at the back of your drum module before you buy anything I'm mentioning, just to make sure that the mounting plate will match what kind of stand or whatever mechanism you're about to buy. All right, let's move on to option number 4. Is to go buy a mounting arm. This is a mounting arm. Sometimes the mounting arms actually have this attachment on both ends. And so that way you can actually grab onto the bottom of the drum module. Since this has that plastic mounting plate, you can actually firmly attach it like right there, and then you attach the other end to your cymbal stand. Now obviously this might not be an option for everybody because the heavier drum modules might just overload your cymbal stand that you actually attach it to. Point the cymbal stand leg towards where the drum module is going to be so the weight distribution is on point. You do the same thing for mic stands. You point the mic stand leg towards where the mic is going to be. That way the mic stand doesn't accidentally fall over. Let's go on to number 5. I know I said there were only 4 ways, but the 5th one is kind of cheating. This is to use a section of drum rack. So what I'm doing is I'm using a Go Edrum section of drum rack and I'm mounting my drum module to it. I've mounted an extra cymbal on it before, I've mounted an electronic cowbell before, and I mounted an extra side snare on it before. The reason why I use it is because I can mount my drum module and all kinds of other pads at the same time. It's really, really useful like that, and that way I don't have to buy extra cymbal stands and all kinds of stands just to try to mount extra pads. It can do lots of extra things at once. So if for some weird reason you happen to have a section of drum rack lying around, Or if you find one incredibly cheap somewhere off of a desperate drummer, you can buy that and add a couple of extra cymbals, an extra snare, and your drum module all in one pretty compact package. But when I travel, I don't actually take that drum rack with me because, you know, it's just extra space I don't want to use in my car. So I actually use a djembe. Last time I brought this with me somewhere, actually the only time I've ever played live with this thing behind me, I used a djembe. It's like, it worked perfectly for me. It's the free option. That's the funny thing about gear. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars going to a music store, buying all these new things, or you can just use random stuff you have lying around your house. Hope this list helped you out. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe. I will see you guys in a few.